Everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yay. We're excited about this one.
Yes.
We are very excited about this podcast.
Yes.
My name is Leah. This is Between the Sheets with Leah. I am your host with the most. I am a God-fearing, money-making, action-taking, manifesting queen.
That's right.
And this is my co-host.
Hi guys, WHITNEY period poos. It's nice to see you back.
Yes, and we have a special
Yes,
guest
we do.
today.
Yes.
And go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I am Dr. Erika Karpman.
Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a sex therapist and a sex educator. So I have my PhD and my Master's of Education in Human Sexuality, and I'm also a licensed clinical social worker.
Wow.
I love that.
Yes. This is dope,
Busy
guys.
lady.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Super dope. We have been wanting for some time now. I told her when I first met her that I probably manifested her because we've been
Yep.
wanting for some time now to get some specialists on the show so that we're not just providing our
Right.
opinion of things, but we're actually getting some facts. We're getting some, information, education based off of people that are in the field of a specific topic. And so
Yes.
we love that you're here. Thank you for coming.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for
Thank
being so
you.
open to
You
coming.
are the manifest queen, so
Yes,
here I
she
am.
is.
That's right. That's right. So we're going to dive right in. And I guess I kind of, and sorry about these flies. We are going to dive right in. And I want to first just ask you about what got you into this.
Yeah.
Like, what was it that you were like, hey, I'm going to be a sex therapist? Like, what was it?
I honestly, in high school, I just loved talking about sexuality, sex stuff.
Right.
I was the one that my friends went to ask about sex questions.
Right.
I was researching it. I found it so fascinating. And I remember sitting in sex education classes and being like, this could be a
Right.
lot better.
Yes.
This is missing so much.
Right.
And even back then, I was like, there is a lot that's missing, and I
Yeah.
want this to be better. And so here I am many years later, and I realize that sex therapy and sex education is a real career.
Yeah.
You actually can
get
go to
paid,
school for
right?
it. You can get paid for it.
Yeah.
And so here I am, and I absolutely love it. And I think that everyone should know themselves sexually and
Right.
should be able to understand themselves in a sexual manner. And I want to help people.
So not only do you work with individuals, you work with couples. So it's both,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
And so when people have questions either about like maybe it's their marriage, maybe boyfriend or girlfriend, you can see them, or you can see just an individual who may be experiencing whatever. I mean, this is going to be a
Right.
pretty wide range of topics, I guess, because I was telling Whitney and just kind of on the live, sex is not. You would think with today's day and age,
Yeah.
all the shows, and I'm not talking about sex education shows, I'm just talking about that
Yeah.
sex is out there, that we don't talk about it. Like we have this.
It's like a taboo.
Yes,
Yep.
it's a
Yeah.
really weird taboo around the idea of talking sex. I remember talking with my husband to my oldest at one point when we said, okay, we really need to sit down and have the birds and the bees talk. And that was never done with me. I never had that as a child. And so I wanted to make sure that when I sat down and talked with my son about it, that we gave him above and beyond information, because I wanted him to know, like, look, if you have questions, we want you to know that it's first of all, it's a safe place. We want you to come to us, not feel ashamed, not feel embarrassed.
Right.
And yet he was still very embarrassed.
Which is so important to just say that in essence, because it is. It's embarrassing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we said, and then on top of that, when your friends are talking all of this mess about what they think they know, you're really going to know.
Yep.
And if you have any questions, you can ask us and we're going to give you the truth. So that was kind of I remember my husband was so scared to say the word penis. Like it was just, we were sitting down and he was just like, he was like, your bird. And I was like, it's a penis, Nando. Say penis.
Well, we need to label it correctly.
Your bird. It's all about giving it names. Coin purse.
Yeah.
Change purse.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I appreciate that you called him out on that, because we do really need to give the anatomical name to
Yes.
our body parts.
Yeah.
We need to know what they actually are, and there's stories of people not labeling their genitalia correctly,
Yes.
and sexual abuse goes under the radar because they're not using the correct name of their body part to tell adults what's happening to them.
This is how they're, yes,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So that's amazing that you did that. We should all be able to name our body parts, just like our nose, our ears, our eyes. You know, a clitoris is not a bad word.
Right.
Vulva is not a bad word.
Orgasm is not a bad word.
It's not a bad word. Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking as we were making the video, and I'm like, yeah, you know, so we need to be able to talk about, like, if we can't climax and we can't orgasm. And I'm thinking in my head already, like, how many people are like, oh my God, like,
I can't believe she's
saying the
that.
word orgasm, you know, and yet, again, we need to start getting comfortable with this.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of told me a little bit about your why, and how long have you been in the field?
Ooh, probably about 10 years now.
Awesome.
I started my educational journey in 2013.
Okay.
And then from there, I've just been doing different one-on-one education with adults with intellectual developmental disabilities.
Yes.
I've also done one-on-one therapy with survivors of sexual trauma.
Right.
And now I am branching off and also starting my own private practice. And
Congratulations.
Yes.
Boss
That's
lady in the
awesome.
house.
Yes.
Can I get one of those? I'm scared to do it.
Right.
There we go. I did it right. So yeah, applause for that. We have a boss woman in the house for sure. So let's first and foremost just talk about the taboo of just talking about sex. Where do you feel like this originated from? Do you feel like it's a transition from coming out of the traditionalists into the baby boomers into the, you know, Generation X? Do you feel like there was just this, where did it start and why were we not comfortable with it?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And it really, looking back in the research and where we put emphasis on the research, and it wasn't until Kinsey and Virginia Woolf that, you know, I think it was in the 80s, or I'm sorry, the 70s, that they really started to look at sexual, you know, people being sexual with each other, and, you know, the orgasm. Oh my God, I can't think of the word. The
Climax.
There's like a whole, you know, the beginning,
Right.
the middle, the end.
Right.
And so we just really started to learn more about it. And as research has gone, we've also gotten more information about what is orientation, what
Right.
is gender, what is the difference,
Right.
what makes up our attraction,
Right.
what is incorporated in our attraction, because there's romantic attraction, there's physical attraction, there's intellectual attraction. And so there's so many different avenues within sexuality, and so there's just so much research to be done, and it does feel like we're late to the game. And that, you know, it wasn't until 1998 that we realized what the full clitoris looked like, and we saw the whole, you know, the whole body part and the anatomy. And so we are a little bit late, but we are catching up, and I do think that these younger generations that are becoming more aware and becoming more comfortable talking about it and being aware of who they are and what their identity is, it hopefully will create this shift and this, you know, larger conversation around sexual communication and sexual identity.
Yes.
I love that.
I want to ask, you know, how, first and foremost, how can a parent be more open with their kids in talking about these things? From a study that came from a baby boomer home, latchkey kid, and it wasn't important to talk about, you know, because they came from the traditionalist age, which again, they didn't talk about it. So it was just following this generational path of we don't talk about it.
Right.
And so then you have somebody like me who's like, no, we need to talk about it. Like, we need to be more open. It's going to happen whether or not we want it to, you know, so let's start talking about it. How can, first and foremost, parents become more comfortable talking to their kids and not allowing just the school to do so?
Absolutely. Well, for starters, you have to start talking about it.
Yeah.
So in your own relationship, having those conversations, talking about sex, saying the anatomy, the words, vagina, vulva, penis, saying those out loud. And honestly, it starts at a really young age. So when they are labeling their body parts, you are also labeling...
Don't say bird, babe.
Right.
Yeah, you are also labeling where their pee is coming out of.
Right.
You know, we talk about these things. And so really starting at a young age, because more often than not, parents are talking to their kids after they've already started having sex and being sexually active. And we really want to get to them before they're doing that, so that they're going into it with the right tools, the right communication, things to say.
And what if the parent's just not comfortable? Because that's what we're talking about, is people that are uncomfortable having a conversation about sex. How and what can they do to make themselves more comfortable so that they can have this conversation?
come see me.
Right. Go see us.
Come see me.
See a doctor.
It could be something as simple as, hey, I'm just not comfortable talking about sex. And you start to explore that with them.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. I could also act as an aide and sit down with them and their child and say, hey, we're going to talk about these things. Your caregivers, your parents are here because it is really important, and I want them to know the information as well. Yeah. But let's all sit down and have a conversation, and so I can also act as an aide in that conversation.
Well, and I think it's not for nothing. It's good to also tell that, you know, wherever children, or if children are watching this, if they're not, finding somebody to talk to. I didn't have that healthy sexual relationship talk with my mom just because of other experiences, but I'll be damned. A teacher at school was the one that kind of sat me down and talked to me about it, took me to Planned Parenthood. Like, that woman saved my life. So just being able to have some type of adult, somebody that you feel safe to talk with about it is important.
And
Absolutely.
I mean, wouldn't you want to be the person that your kid talked to? You know, so I think about that. It's like, you know, would you want your kid to get information from Susie Q down the street when you can just have that? I mean, it can deepen your relationship, just being open. You know, I feel like with my kids, being as open as I was, it really did open up a door for them to, they don't express nearly as much as I wish they would to me. And maybe they do with their dad, maybe they don't, maybe they do really feel uncomfortable. And so I'm thinking, you know, okay, I have to identify where in our relationship are they feeling that this was not okay to talk about when we were very, very open, or maybe they're just embarrassed, you know? But I feel like I wouldn't want that information to have come from somebody else or a different, you know, I wanted to talk to them actually even before they got into the sex ed, you know, class and kind of go from there. So kids is one thing. I want to dive in and talk about, you know, individuals. So you deal with a lot of sexual trauma. We do as well, believe it or not, just being in the space that we are in, photographing women. And a lot of women come to see me because they are trying to empower themselves by getting out of this mindset of guilt and shame and really feeling okay with who they are sexually. Feeling sexy to them has been a taboo of you know, shame and guilt, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And then just the trauma of maybe something that they've been through where women feel like they can't experience the wholeness of sex and orgasm because they feel it's dirty, or they're ashamed of it. So how has that been for you as far as teaching? Because you said that you came a lot from sexual trauma. Like that was kind of one of your highlights of who you speak to is sexual trauma victims.
Yeah, so it's really, again, getting comfortable in your own skin, learning yourself, learning your identity. I really, really advocate people practicing saying no. Yes. Say no. Practice it. Practice it. Practice it. So that when you hit your hard boundary or you hit your limit, you are comfortable saying no. Right. It's really easy to say yes. We're, you know, a lot of people are people pleasers and we'll jump right into stuff. So practice saying no. Because, sexual trauma can really impact our ability to be sexual, want to be sexual, get excited about being sexual. Right. But there is a way to find yourself again, reclaim your body, and to feel comfortable in that. And I think that there's also this other piece of what our background is, how we grew up, what we grew up around. And you spoke a lot, Leah, about that. And, you know, again, having that calm, comfortable conversation around sexuality and being comfortable with it, but looking into why do we feel this way about sex? Why are we feeling uncomfortable? Why do we feel shameful? Right. Where did we get those messages and why are they sticking with us? Right. You know, because some of those messages we can get rid of. We need to drop them. They are not good for us.
Not at all.
And, you know, the empowering ones we need to, you know, add into our repertoire and, you know, I am sexy. I am powerful. It is okay to be sexy and powerful.
Right. Just no nip slips. Right. Speaking of.
Unless you want that.
No, and I can relate to it. I'm a sexual trauma victim. I was molested for a couple of years when I was younger. So the whole sex talk for me and my family was just completely different because of the age that it happened to me. I specifically remember being in a room with a therapist and her, you know, showing me dolls and trying to explain what happened. And it was all like extremely stressful. And then from the transition from that, the therapy that I went through was very much like, protect your body. Don't show your body. Ooh. Don't do this. Don't do that. So she jokes with me all the time, but I have this level of like, I'm not going to overstep the boundaries. Like, even when I come in a room, I'm like, are you decent? Like, I won't overstep. It doesn't bother me per se, but I've just, that whole thought process was instilled in me at a very, very young age. So then when I did become sexually active, my mom was pissed. And she found out in the worst way, and it was to my high school boyfriend, but it was never anything that I felt comfortable talking to her about at all. Never. I still wouldn't have a sex talk with my mom. It wasn't there. So the fact that you're open with the kids, I mean, that's so important.
Yeah.
So important. And it instills in you as you get older, like how I behave or dress around certain people, or how I allow people to touch me, saying no, saying yes, like all of that ties into it.
Well, and I think that's really powerful that you said, we have to be comfortable with saying no. And that's not just even in the bedroom. That's just with anything in our life. We've got to get comfortable starting to say no when we don't want to do something, when a friend calls us up. And I actually read a book about how difficult it is for women to say no. I don't know about men, so this one was really specific about women, how we will just sign up for something because we feel so bad about saying no. Why? Yep. Why do we feel bad about saying no? And it tested you in the aspect, which it sounds really harsh, but if you say, hey, do you want to, go have some drinks? No. And it said, don't give any explanation.
Right.
Yeah, right? Like, doesn't that feel, it feels unsettling.
I'm going to have a story with my
no. Because, but why? Why are we having to, if we just say no and leave it at that, it's really powerful, actually.
Very.
But it does feel like, oh, they're going to think I'm, being a bitch, or they're, they're going to think that I'm rude, and these are all of these stories that we start to begin to tell ourselves as opposed to just letting it sit.
Yes.
So sexual trauma with women, and I'm sure men too, right?
Absolutely.
So you're kind of seeing both, and how has this affected, or how have you seen in this, has it affected people to be able to go out and actually perform, I know many women who have been sexually abused, and there is this idea that it's just really dirty and they can't get out of their mindset, because we know that there's a physical aspect of sex, but then there's also the mind. So mind, body, and soul, I believe, are like hand in hand. And I want to ask you about that, because we always say that men are physical. Right. Men are physical. And for women, it's all about, you got to get in my head first. And is that true?
Yeah, actually, so there was a study recently done where women want sex to last about 14 to 15 minutes.
Right.
And the average male lasts about 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
And
that's
so
crazy.
That is a whole 10-minute difference that women are wanting, more in their sexual experience. And so I really want to challenge the idea of sex, and it's beyond just penetration.
Right.
And we've got touching, we've got kissing, we've got rubbing. And we really need to incorporate that into our sexual experience.
Well, you also talked about intellectual, like being attracted, or, the point of the attraction starting. It can start even from a conversation. And even if it's not sexually charged conversation, it could just be that, intellectually you really, I'm feeling this way.
And you can still become aroused by a conversation.
Absolutely.
And it has nothing to do with sex. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if you're comfortable even talking about the one time that you told me that you had an orgasm. And
yes.
I'm calling her out right now. Like, hey, are you going to talk about that?
Of course I am.
That there was no touch, right?
That one. And the crazy part about it, which I want your opinion on this as well. We were not physically touching, we were kissing. And that is the first orgasm that I had with my ex, but it was also to a woman.
That is amazing.
So I don't know. I just think it was mental. I think majority of that sexual relationship was mental, and then that just trapped me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, how is this possible? How am I having an orgasm based off of communication and us kissing? That's it.
Connection.
Yeah.
How amazing is that?
Yeah.
And because we do feel things on other parts of our body. So when you're kissing, you feel that on your lips.
Yes.
It's not like it's just there. Like you're feeling it. It's happening.
Yes, right.
And so there is, with our mind, our body, when we feel connected, when you feel in the moment, when you let go of that shame and guilt and this idea of what sex should look like and what it should be.
Yes.
So many amazing things can happen. Yeah. That's a wonderful story.
Oh my God.
Thank you for sharing.
Like, of course. I was like, what the hell is going on?
So what would you say about that? Like for somebody that is, because would you say that sexual trauma is more mind-based, as much as it is physical, or is there, and how do they overcome?
That's a tough question because I do think that it's individual. I do think that, some people, their anxiety levels, their PTSD is way higher compared to other people's. Sure. And so if their body is having a reaction, then there are physical symptoms. Is their brain also probably having stuff going on? Absolutely. And so I think it really depends if you're feeling it within your body versus is it in your brain? Right. And that's why going to therapy will really help to kind of differentiate between that and work through, okay, if it is physical, how do I work through that? Right. And if it is mental, how do I work through that?
Right. Yeah, I think in therapy, I think that's a really good thing to bring up, is that it is not a one size fits all. Everybody is individualistic, and you have to learn their stories. You have to understand what is making them tick or not. And
you have to learn their bodies, because I'm just going to call it out and say it. Like, not every woman's clitoris is built the same. Not everybody's vagina is set up the same. Yeah. So how you got down with Susie Sally is not the way it works for me.
So much involved in this.
You have to learn me. You have to learn my body. I was just talking to the girls about this. Some of my close friends don't even get aroused or have orgasms based off of actual intercourse. It's more of the stuff prior to than it is after the fact. So, and it's like rubbing two blankets together. Yeah. It's like, this is dry.
So actually about 40% of women cannot, that require more than just penetration for orgasm. And so clitoral stimulation is really important. Yes. It is a really big part in women's sexuality, and it should be talked about. And when you say that you need to learn that your partner's body, absolutely, and that's the communication.
You need to learn your partner's body.
Yes.
It's not just about your body. It's not just about you. You need to learn their anatomy as well. And I think for men, they need to learn a woman's anatomy and feel comfortable talking about it, speaking about it. You know, so
and checking in. Depending on the relationship, you could check in during, but afterwards, or even the next day, having a conversation of how that was. But if you are in the moment and something feels good, let them know.
Right.
Keep going. Don't stop.
But don't lie.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Do not fake the funk, because if you fake the funk, then
they're going to think that's
they're going to think it's good, and they're going to keep doing it, and then you're just going to be
And
resentful.
how do you have that conversation when it doesn't feel good?
Yeah. So again, this is probably one of those times I would try and not do it in the moment unless it's painful, unless you don't like it. You can definitely say, no, let's switch it up. But afterwards, when you are talking about it, saying, hey, remember when you did this thing? I wasn't the biggest fan, or it didn't feel the best for me. Can we try doing something else, or try doing this? And making sure that when you do sit down to have the conversation, you both are prepared for it.
Right.
And you also are
because I feel like some guys get really
ego. How do you not bruise the ego? Well, and vice versa. What if somebody said, hey, you did this and I just didn't like it? Like, we can't just put that on a man, because that would feel shitty to us. Like,
well, and I've been in one of those scenarios where I've been divorced now for about 3 years, and I had a sexual experience. I'm not an angel or a virgin, so judge me if you want to. But I was, and especially after being with a woman for 10 years, she was on ice for 10 years. Like, no men at all. So I started, hooking up with this guy, and he started licking my feet and trying to touch my asshole while we were trying to have sex. And in the middle of it, I was like, what are you doing? He started laughing, and he got so offended.
So that would be that would be that banter, right? That may not be the best time to do it, but then do you just suck it up and let it, or do you say, hey,
you definitely have to say no. If it's a hard boundary, you have to say no. But I also encourage couples to talk about what they're going to do sexually before they do it.
Pause there, because there's so much in depth. So pause there. There's an acronym called SMIRC. We talked about it on the live. It's sex, money, intangibles, religion, and kids. 5 things that you should talk to your partner about before you get into a relationship, like heavy into relationship. It's not like you're going to sit down and be like, okay, let's talk about this. Right. How do you feel about sex? Maybe you do, maybe you don't.
Right.
But that sex topic being a big one, and hard no's, and this is a hard no for me, but how do you open that conversation up? Like, how do you have that conversation ahead of time comfortably? Right. And how do you know, like, if they're not as comfortable? What if you're super comfortable and they're like not? Like, how do you find that in between?
Yeah. Well, it is about relationship building. And so you are aware of your partner. You also know or have seen nonverbal cues.
Right.
You know when your partner's shutting down or they don't want to talk about something. You know, the body kind of coils in. And so there definitely are nonverbal cues that you can read from your partner. And it is a conversation. And so again, sort of saying, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing. Can we schedule a time?
Right.
So I'm not dropping it on you.
So they can mentally prepare for the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, and that's fair, I think, for everybody, too. I mean, and that shows a
But
level
I
of
think
respect.
a lot of the problem is that couples are going into sex without talking about
At all.
anything.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All the time. Like that's the day and age that we live in. And it's just that, you know what, hey, we're kissing, now it's leading into this, and now we're just going to have sex. And so we haven't had a good conversation about sex. And so then maybe afterwards you're like, oh my God, that was horrible.
Yes.
You know, or they're thinking, oh my God, that was horrible. But there was no communication there.
That
there was
happened within my first marriage. I mean, the entire 3 years we were married, I didn't have my first orgasm until after I was divorced. And, you know, experimenting with other people afterwards. And I used to call my mom crying and be like, is this really how sex is supposed to be? Like, this doesn't feel fulfilling. Like, this doesn't feel or like what you see on TV. And again, it was just one of those dry conversations. Like, we just didn't talk about that in our household. So I didn't get the proper information. Like, no, this is what sex is supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to feel. And it's healthy to talk about it. There was none of that.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. It's important, but it's hard. How do you have a conversation with somebody about sex beforehand that you're not even sure? And then maybe that's where you should ask yourself, are you even ready to take that next next level?
Yeah,
if you're not able to talk about it, but you're able to do it.
You shouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
You might want to ask yourself that question.
Absolutely.
Why?
When I talk to my teens a lot, I say to them, you know, if you're not able to talk about it, then you should think about what you're doing, because you should be able to talk about it.
I love that.
First, and you know, when we think about healthy relationships and what is part of a healthy relationship, talking about sex is making that a healthy relationship. And understanding each other. And it does get challenging when we get in the heat of the moment and we're making out and you're like, oh, I want this to keep going. And so again, those are those nonverbal cues where you can kind of pick up and know that this person is into it and we're both on the same page. And then, you know, if it gets too far, somebody says no, and you revisit it in the next day of, okay, so what was it that took it too far?
Yeah.
Where are your boundaries? What can we do? How did you feel about doing it?
I love that, and that's a gem right there in itself.
Yes.
I just want to say, if you are not comfortable talking about sex, then you probably shouldn't be doing it with that person yet. If you're comfortable, then you might be ready to take that next step. And I really would challenge everybody to think about that. Can you have an open conversation with the person that you're with right now about sex and feel really good and comfortable about it? And if you can't, were you ready to jump into that next step? Because then you're missing something already. You're missing that communication. And now you've already jumped into the act of, and now, you know, maybe it's 2 years later, you're still in this relationship and I still haven't even communicated with you what I like. Now, I'm saying that because I've been married for 21 years together with my partner for, 23 years or something like that. And so being with one individual, like, we really did have to learn our each other's bodies, what we liked, and I think it was more so him than me, because we as women think right away, well, men are physical and they can just get it up and do this and then it's over. And for us, I feel like it involves so much more. And so I had to get comfortable with myself, and not only that, but and maybe that is still myself. I'm not exactly sure. And I want to talk about this because I feel like there's either fear or freedom in whatever it is that you do. There's fear and freedom. So you're either afraid to do something and you'll never do it, or there's freedom and you're just like, okay, I'm experiencing this and I'm going to let it go. And we make so many decisions based off of fear. One being that we don't talk to our partner about what we desire, what we like, what we love. Touch me here. This feels good, because we're insecure about what we're saying. Maybe it's fear of rejection, maybe it's fear of, like, they're going to think I'm weird. If I sit there and tell my husband, and we've never talked about this, that I really want you to tie me up and I want you to do it. And he's like, what in the hell? Like, maybe he loves it. And maybe he's like, oh my God, like I had no clue, or I don't want to do this, or this is not what I like. And so that came afterwards for us. That, you know, some of these conversations came afterwards where we were following cues, what we really liked. You know, I'm watching what he likes. He's watching what I like. You know, we're feeling each other's body types out and our, everything. But it took a while. And a lot of it was me, and maybe some of it was him too in his own head of, you know, what if I do this? What's going to happen?
Yes.
You know, and we didn't talk about it. We just tried it.
Right. Which is scary.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah. You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So how do you deal with couples like now and encourage them to say, and I know you're going to say it's just having the conversation, but people that are married and have been married for, you know, 5, 6, 7, maybe it's only a year, and they have not expressed fully what their desires are to their partners.
Yeah. Well,
come see you.
Come see me, and also start that conversation. If you don't start it now, then you're just putting it off for that much longer, and you're going that much longer not having your desires fulfilled. And so,
what are the reasons for not? What are the reasons that you hear about the most of why somebody doesn't say what they want?
You said it, fear.
Yeah.
Fear is definitely a big one. Fear of, you know, internal fear of, what does it say about me?
Right.
And should I be guilty that I have these feelings, or ashamed that I want to try this? And, you know, what would my religion think, or what would my family think, or what would my friends think if they knew that I was into this? What's my partner going to think about me if they knew I'm into this? And then the fear of, well, what is my partner? How are they going to react? Are they going to shut me out? Are they going to be into this? Are they going to think I'm weird? And so that fear really plays into a lot of this inability to communicate around
So what
sex.
are some of your coaching techniques for an individual or even couples who are experiencing fear? What are some of the things that are tools that you would give them? Tips and tools, tricks, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it tricks, but tips and tools.
Yeah. So some of them are writing things down. I'm a big journaler. I love to like get mindful and really figure out what you're thinking. And so writing things down. And so whether you're passing notes back and forth, kind of playing a little game with it, you can write stuff down.
That way you don't actually even have to say it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can sit back to back so that you're also not looking at each other, because sometimes that feels too intimate for people, and that makes them nervous. So if you sit back to back, it kind of takes away a little bit of that to make it easier to have conversations. And so those are two big ones. But I really kind of just suggest ripping off the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
You know, you have to feel secure in your relationship, and there has to be this level of communication that you both are bringing, and security in that relationship that you both are bringing, to say, okay, well, I'm going to bring up these big issues. We need to talk about it. I feel secure in my relationship. We love each other regardless. And then talk about it.
Because I feel like, too, some of the stuff that we tell ourselves, and we were talking about this upstairs, is I heard something really, really powerful, is made up in our own mind. So because we have fear, the next step that we take is we create a storyline in our head. So we don't even know what the outcome is going to be, but we've already created one. So if I tell them this and they do this, and this is how I'm going to react, and this is what happens next, and what if they do this? And so we have got to get to the point of being able to communicate to somebody and then say, you know, there's an open forum. And if your head starts to spiral, this is going to be really powerful, I hope, for most of you guys, because it's super powerful for me, is to say, this is the story that I'm telling myself right now. And that's doesn't even have to be about sex. It could be in a relationship with a friend. You know what I mean? Like, I'm feeling some sort of way, and I've already created this story. So this is the story that I'm telling myself. And you give that open, vulnerable communication space where the other person can say, okay, well, no, like that's not, that's your, and not belittle the person and not make them feel dumb for saying that, like actually being open and saying, wow, like, you know, if somebody told me this is the story that I'm telling myself, it makes, I don't know, it makes me less defensive. You know? And so I think that is a really, really, really powerful thing. I love both of those techniques. Some of those is sit. If you guys missed that, just sit back to back so you don't have to look at each other. Write things down so that if you're not comfortable expressing yourself verbally yet, then you can kind of start opening up the door that way to your spouse or whoever, whoever it is you're with.
Absolutely. And using that, the story I'm telling myself line, or even I am worried that you're going to think this of me.
Yes.
And starting that off, because then that partner hopefully is going to say, well, I don't want to think of you that way, and I'm going to have compassion for you, and I'm open. I want to hear what you have to share.
And how many times have you heard of maybe, and I don't know, I'm really asking a question here, as this person has been afraid for so long to express, and then the other partner's so excited about it.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe they didn't want to bring it up.
Very often. And so I also, when we're creating these stories in our head, I say, well, create the positive story.
Yes.
What does it look like if it all works out? What does it look like if this is a good,
reverse it.
Always going to the negative.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
So I have a couple of other questions that I want to ask as well. First and foremost, is there I've heard, this is going to sound so funny because I've already labeled myself this and I don't even know if it actually truly exists, but are there sexual, like when they say I'm a type A or a type this, whatever, have there been labels for I'm a, is that might say it's atypical,
yeah.
Something like that?
And neurotypical. In sexuality, there's just so many different identities. So I don't know that I've necessarily heard type A, type B, but I've definitely heard a wide range of identities. And there's a lot of identities that are umbrella terms. And so within that term, there are a whole slew of other terms that fall within that category. And so under that umbrella, are there little differences? Absolutely. And so maybe that's kind of that type A, type B sort of thing.
So like they say like, so let's talk about, and maybe I'm saying it incorrectly. I want to ask this really quick. Chris, do you want to check just really quick? I heard something. I don't know if that was your phone, but I just want to be sure on all aspects because I heard a bling. Okay. Yep. This is good conversation. I do not want to miss this. I don't want to miss any of this. So, and I could be saying this wrong. So let's talk about somebody who is not as sexually charged. So we talk about women and hormonal and, aging, but let's just say for all of your life, you've never felt like, oh my God, I want it.
Yeah.
Is there a name for that?
Yes, asexuality.
Okay, so that's what it is.
As you
Okay,
were talking, I was
yes.
like, I know what she's trying to get at. So asexuality, a big umbrella term, also known as ACE. So people might say I'm in the ACE or I fall in the ACE spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And again, that's a whole spectrum within of itself of people who don't want to be sexual at all, people who may be sexual once they develop a romantic connection.
Right.
Once they have, developed something with them, they will be sexual. Some people who just want a relationship and a partner but don't want to be sexual at all, but want to have that partner to live with. Yeah, the companionship. So asexuality is a whole genre within itself of identity.
And would you say that for people that have experienced that or are experiencing that, do people feel like there's something wrong with them?
Initially, I have definitely heard that, especially when, a lot of the teens are talking about being sexual and being sexually active. And, you can sometimes feel on the outside if you are not, with the crowd.
Right.
And so absolutely. But there is a large amount of people out there that identify in the asexuality spectrum.
Women specifically or women and men?
Women and men. Absolutely, yeah.
I remember going to my gyno at one point and telling her that, and I didn't know if it was hormones for me or if I was just tired or, it's not that I don't enjoy sex. Of course I enjoy sex when we're actually in the act, but maybe it's the initiation of it, or I'd be like, I'd rather go to sleep. Like, I'm so tired, I'd rather just sleep.
We joke about it all the time. We're like, women think about, if we do this, I'm gonna have to straighten my hair.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna have to redo it in the morning. Then we're gonna have to do this.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna be tired. And I don't think not a lot of men think like that. They just think about right now in the moment.
Yep, let's just get it. Let's get it going. So I was curious about that because she said to me, if I could place stock in a product of, something like Viagra for women, I would so do it. She goes, I would be a multimillionaire. She goes, because you have no idea how many women say that very same thing, that they're not interested. They're just not interested.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then we have other people. So then I hear some of my girlfriends talking as well. And I'm curious to know what this would be called. Because is it a nymphomaniac or is it not? Where like, they just like, yeah, I want it. Like, and they'd have this desire and this craving. So what would that be considered?
So allosexual is the idea that we are all very sexual beings and that you want to be sexual. And then asexual is this identity of not placing a lot of or any interest in sexual, being sexual. But again, within that asexuality spectrum, there are people who may identify as asexual but still engage in sexual behaviors.
Yeah. Right.
So it is very confusing, and it does
And
overlap
how do you find a
lot.
balance for if you didn't have a conversation, again, we go back to the conversation, you didn't have a conversation about this ahead of time. Now you're trying to, balance this relationship where one partner is highly, highly sexually charged and the other one is not. Is that where you see a therapist? Is that where, and how is it something that it can be fixed? Does that mean I need to be fixed? Does that mean that he needs to be fixed? Does that need, where do we ask ourselves, okay, and that's why I asked is, do people think that there's something wrong, that something needs to be fixed?
So that's a very, very personal question. And so it's, like I said, personal. So depending on what you want, if it is important for your relationship to have that sexual drive and to be sexual, then yeah, work on it. It is really important.
Yeah.
If it's not important to either one of you and it just doesn't matter, you guys can go, for months and not have sex, and that's totally fine.
Right.
Then you don't need to fix something that's not an issue.
Yeah.
But it is really personal. And so if you want it to be better, then yeah, work on it. It can be better. It absolutely can. And the key to great sex is sexual communication.
Yes.
Communicate is the key to great sex. And, if you don't want it as much, also communicate that. And it is okay. And so when I talk about being really mindful and learning your body, this is part of it.
Yeah.
Of knowing, are you even sexual? Do you get excited when you're having sex?
Right.
So would you say that it was better for an individual to come see you first, even if they're in a relationship, to get to know them first and then bring in the partner?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I think it really, again, keep going. It depends on the individual and it depends on the relationship of where the relationship is. Obviously, if there's some abuse and trauma going on within the relationship, that's going to, the sex stuff is going to take a back seat, and there's some other stuff that needs to be addressed first. But I think it really depends on the couple. It depends on the individual.
Right.
If somebody's not comfortable in themselves, then yeah, I would recommend individual therapy first to get that self-esteem and that confidence. But if you're already kind of coming into the relationship and it's, it's kind of there and you just need to work on that sexual communication better and get more on the same page, then coming in as a couple.
So give our listeners a couple of tips and ideas as well then for somebody that is not as sexually charged, what they can do individually before, even without their partner, that might help them. Like, let's just say that they want to, like you said, they desire to, like, okay, I want to do this. And also, would you ever subscribe any drugs? Like, would you say, okay, yeah, go do ecstasy?
I mean, there is a lot of research out there, and it's out there. I am not against it. I think that in the right situation, the right scenario with the right professional, it can absolutely be helpful. Yeah. But is that for everyone? Absolutely not. And there's other ways of, increasing and enhancing your sexual behavior and experience with each other. And so now I forgot.
Like what?
So like
like what else can they do? What else can they do? Like
thinking about what does turn you on, what gets you excited. Do you need an hour to yourself before you're with somebody to get yourself ready? Can you come straight home from work and jump into the shower and get ready to go? You have to know what amps you up, what puts on your accelerators. So we've got these accelerators and the brakes, and the brakes are, oh my God, I'm so tired, I'm so full, I'm so stressed, I have no interest in doing this. And the accelerators are, wow, they look really good in that outfit, or, ooh, I'm feeling this, and, and that kind of stuff. And so you have to think about, what are those accelerators for you? What gets you going? And then I also really like to incorporate our 5 senses.
Right.
What do you see? What do you taste? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you feel? And are any of those things helpful in increasing your desire?
Right.
Is there a smell that you just gets you excited?
Right.
Is there, an outfit you like to see on your partner that,
Right.
Gets you excited? And so incorporating that stuff.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
You have any questions?
I do. And it's personal for me. I don't care.
We're going to take advantage of this time with you.
I just, in both relationships, and I know sexual trauma has a lot to do with it and things that I've experienced before, but it has been a common argument in both relationships that I was married, that I am not the initiator. And I struggle with it. And I don't know if sometimes I feel like I am initiating, but it's not perceived that way. And I know it boils down to communication, but I guess I would say, what are some tips that you could give me to help me feel comfortable in being comfortable with being the initiator? Because I have a hard time with it. I'm like, oh, you look great, but I'm not doing that. Pay attention to me, though.
Yeah. What do you think it is that's holding you back from doing that?
I feel like it's different with different people. My first marriage, it was just, sex just felt like such a chore, and it was just me always being the giver, the pleaser. Nothing was ever reciprocated. So I feel like I maybe got resentful towards the end, and I was like, it's not fun for me, so I'm not going to initiate this. The next relationship, it started off really heavy, strong. We had a great sexual connection, great communication, and then it just kind of dwindled off. And I would say that there were a couple of times where I outwardly tried to initiate and was rejected. So that coming back and that fear of being rejected again.
Yeah.
But I don't want to sit in that. Like, I don't want to get comfortable being in this space. I want to be an initiator. I want that person to know, because that ended up being thrown in my face. Well, I feel like I'm not attracted to you. Yeah. If you're not initiating with me, then that must mean something's going on with me that you don't like about me.
Yeah.
Story I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, and you talked about, the rejection when you heard no, and we talked about how important it is to practice saying no.
Right.
Well, it's also really important to practice hearing no.
Right.
And knowing that no does not mean no forever.
Right.
It's probably just a no right now.
Right.
For whatever reason. And so really getting comfortable with hearing no in no doesn't mean forever.
Not take it personal.
Yeah, and not taking it personally.
How do you get comfortable with hearing no?
Right. Well, and that was my thing. Is it's like,
But
well,
how?
damn, I already struggle with being the initiator, and you're telling me no. I'm not doing that shit again.
Yeah, because you, I get it. Like, you would almost think, okay, I'm gonna throw it out there, and then if that's it, I'm done.
Yeah, I would almost say, kind of plan out when you're gonna initiate.
Okay.
To get some practice.
Right.
So saying, hey, babe, when you come home Thursday, do you think that would be a good time, sometime between when you get home and when we go to bed?
Right.
And so there's kind of this blanket, all right, I'm going to initiate.
Right.
They know I'm going to initiate. They should be in the mood because we've already kind of
Right.
talked
Or
about
notes,
it.
I guess, too. You could do,
Right.
love notes.
Right.
Like, you, looked really great in that outfit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
feeling some sort of way.
Absolutely. But with anything, practice.
Right.
You're not going to get comfortable in something if you don't practice
Right.
it.
Right.
So what if you want
Thank
something
you.
more spontaneous?
Right.
So
I'm sitting next to you and you're looking good, but I'm really in my head already and I'm fearful and I want to make a first step, but what do I do?
yeah, that's really tough. You gotta say, what's the story I'm telling myself?
Yeah.
And what's the positive outcome?
What
could be the
flipping it again,
Right.
reversing it. But if I do
Making it,
this,
yeah.
and now we're about to have amazing sex, and
Right.
as opposed to if I do this and they reject me or they say no, it's like, okay, well, if I do this and then they
Right.
put me up against a wall.
Right. Then it's going to be really a great time.
Or what about not even necessarily making a move, but just stating the fact, hey, you look really good. I would really like to make out with you.
Right.
Or I really want
Right.
to jump you right now.
Right.
I'll jump your bone.
And just saying it and seeing what they say. And
Right.
they might say, hey, is that really what you want? Let's go for
Right,
it.
right.
Or no, we've got a busy day, whatever that may be.
Right.
But you can even just trying to verbalize it
Right.
instead of using those nonverbal, let me touch and let me
Right.
hope that they're getting the message. Say it.
Right.
You want something, say
Don't be
it.
afraid, just say it.
People
Yeah.
are not mind readers.
Yes.
Do you feel like that answers your question? Do you feel
Very
like that
much
gives
so.
you
Well, and I've since now being out and being single again. Of course, I've had sexual partners, but I've tried to teeter it a little bit, like initiate more of the conversation through text message, but I still get shy. And she knows I'm just not a sappy person or like I could go from being like, oh, let me see it to like, ew, get away from me. So it's my
I was just thinking when you asked about like what your turn-ons were as well, and I don't know if this is straying away from her, but from what she's wanting to ask, but also when you said, you know, like what you're asking the person, like, you know, what turns you on? Is there suggestions that you would say, okay, well, watch this or watch this kind of movie? And I'm not even just talking about pornography. We know what pornography is about, but I'm just saying, like, maybe there's a movie that's very, you know, enticing, and see if you like it. And if you don't, or if there's different things that you're like, oh my God, I'm feeling some sort of way as I'm watching this, so that they can help also identify like what their triggers are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that idea. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
I think that's great to visually see some other things. You know, I feel like I have a lot of clients that just kind of walk in and they're like, I have no idea. You need to give me some direction. And so I'll list off, I'm like, all right, we've got number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. How do you feel about these? What are some of your thoughts?
Right.
Even with identities, I'll say, go online, sit with this identity, wear it for a little bit. How do you feel about it? And, you know, when you think about different sexual experiences, what do you think it would be like for you if you were laying on that table or doing this thing? And I think that's a great idea to definitely look at it, explore it, see it. You're not going to know if you don't try and if you don't kind of look at it a little bit.
Right. I have it's kind of a raunchy question, but I've seen it, you know, on shows before. Me and the girls talk about it on occasion. It is crazy to me, because for me, it's more of a mental thing. But what is this crap about, like, I love dominant sex. I love aggressive, dominant sex. However, it's this new thing that guys are doing where they're, like, spitting in their significant other's mouth at the same time, choking at the same time. And I'm just like, you are not about to treat me like a piece of property. What is that about? And is that even healthy? Like, not like healthy, like, yeah, you're spitting in your mouth, I hope you're healthy, you're not going to get me sick. But I mean, like, mentally,
healthy.
Is that healthy to be that dominated during the sexual act? Like,
if it is consensual, absolutely, definitely.
Consensual and non-consensual.
Yes, consensual. As long as it is consensual. Again, these are the people that have probably talked about it beforehand. What's your boundary? Where can I spit? Where can't I spit? And having those conversations. And so I actually, within the BDSM and the kink community, one of the things that I really appreciate is their conversation around consent. And knowing, okay, what's the green light, what's the yellow light, and where's that red light? And having those conversations. And so engaging in that behavior absolutely can be healthy if it is done consensually and with both parties really being aware of why they're doing it, what gets them excited about it, and really knowing themselves being in that situation.
And I think that's the difference of where you have your people that love that, you know, type of sex, and they love that type of, you know, physical, and then there's other people that would be a hard no for them. That they just say that they would never be interested to, you know, in even trying something like that. Or maybe you watch those triggers with your partner, and all of a sudden they're creeping up, kind of grabbing your throat a little bit, and you're like, oh, okay, you like that. So are we exploring something here? Or there's something that you haven't been showing me, or you know, whatnot. And I think that was a really good key thing too, is just to really pay attention. You got to pay attention. It's not all about you. It's not all about you and sex. I mean, really, it's got to be about your partner as well. You know, so absolutely. I would ask another thing is so let's talk about orgasms for just a few minutes, because I know that this is a big topic of conversation amongst women. That like you said, that there's so many women, and I read that 10 to like 15% of women have never even had an orgasm, and then about
just crazy. Go in the bathroom right now. I'm just kidding.
About 40% of women say that they're really unpleased with the way that they, you know, orgasm, and so being aware of your partner's ego, you know, and maybe saying, okay, well, I need, you know, vibrational, you know, stimulation, and I want to bring this into the bedroom. We hear about men all the time being really uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it talks, you know, talking about penetrative sex and clitoral stimulation, and there is a difference. You know, bringing awareness with your partner of, hey, I really would like more clitoral stimulation. This is really what gets me excited. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I would imagine that your partner wants you to feel good.
Yeah.
That's, you know, the security in the relationship and that you want each other to feel good. And so having that conversation of this is what feels good. Or in the moment when they are doing something that feels good, you tell them, this feels good.
Right.
Don't stop.
Right.
You know, I want you to do this. The next time I want you to do this again. And so really, really honing in on that communication. And then the other piece of if, you know, I'm thinking about a heterosexual couple and if the male climax is first, sex does not have to be over.
Right.
There is still more. You can still cuddle. You can still touch. You can still kiss. Maybe that's when the vibrator comes out and you need more of that clitoral stimulation, you know, and so there are ways to incorporate it and you definitely need to have that conversation.
Right.
I think it's important just thinking is there's other ways too. I think women being in their head when you had said earlier, like make sure you know don't lie.
Right.
Number one, don't lie. If you don't like something and it doesn't feel good, don't lie. But if you're not comfortable saying no yet, you're just not, you know, maybe the relationship's new, maybe you're afraid of rejection, maybe moving their hand, maybe moving their head, maybe moving their, you know, their body to a position that feels more comfortable, and you're just kind of leading them into what feels, you know,
those
good to you.
nonverbal cues, you know, closing your legs a little, shifting your body, maybe pulling them up to try and do something else. But yeah, absolutely. There are definitely a lot of nonverbal cues that you can use besides, you know, verbal communication.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Can you speak on briefly about the different types of orgasms? Because I didn't really get into this until much older in life. And I had a situation that happened where I squirted before, but it shocked the hell out of me. And I was like, what the hell is that? Because it doesn't feel like an orgasm. It feels completely different.
Absolutely. And again, lacking on research, we're just kind of now learning more about squirting, where it comes from, what
I'm like,
is
what
it?
Did I
Is
just
it pee?
piss? Did I just piss all over the bed? I was so embarrassed. So mortified. But it is what it is.
It is a thing. It happens with women. You also can train your body to be able to do that.
See, that's crazy.
So there are women that will go and learn how to do it. And it's a type of orgasm. It comes out of the urethra.
Right.
So there is some pee in it, but it is not a pee, you know, urination.
Right.
It's just because it's going through that same pathway that, you know, there's some in it.
But it is different. It's different than the regular, you know, orgasm.
And there's penetrative orgasms, and then there's clitoral orgasms as well.
Right.
So penetration is,
I'm learning
you know,
so much.
and here, I will bring out my
has her little handy dandy thing.
Yeah, this is a vulva, and so in here is the vagina, and so the penetrative.
Men really need to pay attention as much as women do.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, you know, how many men go into something and they go into sex and they're like, they think they're badass. Like, they're like, and you're like, if you get into it and you're like, what the are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not it. And every woman is different. And so just because you were with Susie Q for 10 years or whatever doesn't mean that Mary Jane is going to like it the same way. And so you have to understand that it's different. So doing something to one person doesn't necessarily mean it's going to feel good to the next person. So you've got to learn their anatomy.
Absolutely, yeah. And so this is also the full clitoris. And so when I talk about penetrative sex.
And is this outer clitoris?
So this part right here, this gland, is the only piece that we actually see.
Right.
All this is internal. So the clitoris is way bigger
than what you think,
it is. Yeah. And the only purpose of it is for pleasure.
That's insane.
So women have an orgasm just for pleasure in our bodies.
Right.
And so penetrative sex, sometimes you'll have it, you'll feel the penis along the internal clit. And so, you know, that also will feel good. And that's why penetration will feel good. But then we've also got, you know, the clitoris that's sticking out.
Right. The outer portion.
The outer portion, yes.
Okay. And so I think for men as well, that I do it just as much as women do. You know, I think that men need to kind of look at the women's anatomy and understand that not everything is just right there, or this may not feel good right here. We do have a couple questions, and I think we may actually have already answered them. But she wanted the first question that we had was, ask her for the low libido question. So was that something that I kind of already touched base on? Was just so you can see that women are asking already, what if you have a low libido? This is so highly common amongst women, is that whether they're tired or they just feel like, Do
you notice at all in any other encounters that it's based off of like a certain age, or maybe after women have children, before they have children? Like, do you see any significance with those?
Absolutely. So the older that women get, there is a decrease in their libido.
Right.
Not all the time. It's, everyone is different, but we tend to, or research tends to see, the older women get, their libido does drop. And whether that has to do with kids being tired, work, running around, doing all these other things, as you get older, your responsibilities increase, so you're doing a lot more things. Right. And so all of this does play into your libido, your sexual drive, and it really comes down to, are you okay with what your libido is?
Right.
If you're okay with it, then that's fine. That's great. You don't have to have a really high libido if you don't want one. If it is something that is really important in your relationship and it is something that's important to you, then there are steps.
What if it's not as important to you, but it's important to your partner?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so it's going to have to come down to that relationship. And what are you willing to put into the relationship? Where's the compromise in the relationship?
Right.
Because there are compromises in all different aspects in relationships. And so sex is definitely one of them. And figuring out, is this a relationship I want to be a part of if our libidos are so opposite?
Right. Yeah.
Or is this something that's worth it for me to work through, and we can find a way? And so it really does depend on the relationship.
Well, and we heard from another podcast too, that it could potentially be your birth control too. The hormones can also be a cause to
medication, anti-anxiety, antidepressant.
So don't just write it off that something's wrong with you. It could be something else that you're internally putting in your body that could be causing that issue.
Talk to your doctors for sure.
I feel like some of the doctors just don't even know, even like the gynos, even like they're just like, oh no, that's this, this is fine for you, it doesn't do any of that, it's completely okay for hormones, and you're like, but something's wrong.
I still feel off.
The other question that we had was, she said 70% of women, this is what another thing is, says 70% of women say that they have not had a penetrational orgasm, that the majority of it is actual clitoral.
I don't know statistics, like the particular statistics, but I would agree with that.
And what would you say for women that are wanting to experience a more penetrative orgasm, what they can do if their partner is not, if it's not happening? Does size matter?
I love it.
That is the big old question. Does size matter? Well, it really depends on your vagina. It really depends on the person. Some people do really enjoy a thicker penis. Some people, it doesn't matter for them. Our vagina only expands so much. Right. So even if a penis is so big, there's only a certain amount of it that can go in. Our cervix is there. So, it does stop at some point.
Yeah.
Is it true if it curves to the side, you have a better opportunity of a G-spot orgasm? Like, I've heard that before. And I'm
for you men that feel insecure about your curved penis,
you gotta learn your motions.
Right hand a little bit too much, sir.
Love it.
That's funny.
What would you say? Is that true or not?
I mean, penises also come in all different shapes and sizes, so they are out there, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, just like vulvas look all different, so do penises.
I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions that I missed really quick before we kind of cut it down here. So we talked about sexual trauma. We talked about couples experiencing, a lot of this. What we're finding is that it's all based on communication.
Yes.
How comfortable first can you get in having a conversation? Because if it's your partner that is not comfortable, then you may need to be the initiator to get comfortable, which is kind of a double whammy for you, because if you're already feeling uncomfortable being the initiator, then you also have to be like, okay, now I got to get comfortable talking about this, on top of that.
Yep.
And so I love the little tips and advice that you gave for these specific, couples and people. How can somebody find you? How can they talk to you? How can they reach out to you? And how are you seeing? Is it insurance, non-insurance based? Talk to me about that for a few minutes.
Absolutely. So you can find me at Allosexuality. That is the name of my practice. So if you go to Allosexuality.com, you will see my website, and it lists stuff about me and different services that I offer. I do individual therapy. I also do couples therapy. I also do education. So if you're not looking to dive into your past, you don't really want to do that, and you just want to find out more information and you just kind of want to be more educated and apply those things, I do a one-on-one educational coaching as well.
I love that.
So yeah, I'm also giving presentations at different schools, at different organizations, communities. I actually on Thursday I am presenting on queer identities in therapy.
I love
through
that.
the Cedar Springs Hospital. So yeah, Evolve Sexuality is definitely where you can find me. Insurance at this point, at this time, I'm not taking insurance. I do provide super bills, which are, you know, if you have out of network benefits, you can submit them and hopefully get reimbursed for a portion of the service.
And is all your services based off of sessions, whether it's 1, 2, 3? Do you have like personalized plans where somebody can say, you know, hey, this is, or do you tell them, hey, you're going to need about 10 sessions with me?
Yeah. So depending on what you're coming in for, therapy, I usually, again, every person is different, and so it really depends on the person and what you're coming in with. But I say, you know, minimum 6 months in therapy. It could be a longer time. It could be 1 to 2 years.
Right.
In terms of coaching, again, depending on what you're looking for, if you want to set up a 4-week plan, I can set up a 4-week plan. If you want to say, I want to try this out once, let me see if this is even for me, we can do individually session by session and go from there and kind of create a plan together. I am all about the individual, and I know that everyone is very different. And so I think it's really important that I'm able to tailor for what the person is looking for, what they need, what they want to get out of it. And so I'm really open to working with, you know, with whoever, with you on what you foresee this looking like and what you want to get out of it.
Erika, I feel like we could have dived so much more into
Oh my
other
gosh.
different topics.
Yeah,
So we
we
may have
could.
to do a part 2 with
I
you.
love that. Please.
Because
Yes.
there's just, I mean, I'm thinking in my head, I'm watching the time and I'm like, gosh, we
Right.
didn't touch base on this. We didn't touch base on this. We didn't touch base on that. And I really think that this is such an important conversation to be having and getting people more comfortable with it, for sure. So I'm going to leave it back to the listeners and say, like, if you got so much out of this and there's something else that she didn't touch base on or we didn't touch base on, and you really want to know, maybe, you know, you have some questions that are private and you want to reach out to her, great, reach out to her. If there's something else that we missed and you're saying, hey, this is something that I really feel like you guys should have talked about, then let us know. Like, subscribe, comment. We always say that between the sheets with Leah on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. She's giving you her information. We'll probably drop her number and a link on the website as well when we drop the podcast. Look out for that when this is dropped. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge and your wisdom. And thank you for serving the community the way that you're doing by offering this service. Because I don't know if I would have even known that this has existed before you came in and said, hey, this is what I do. I'm like, oh, we don't have to figure it all out.
We can come to you for answers.
Yes.
So
Thank you for giving me this platform and having this platform of talking about sex and sexuality. It is so important, and so it's great to see that, you know, people are definitely out there talking about it.
We got to get more comfortable, guys. We
Yes.
we can't, you know, we got to fight against
Can't
these
be
taboos
fearful.
and paradigm thinking. Even you know what you were taught, what you knew, you have to fight against that. You have to get to know you. I love that you brought it back to a lot of this starts within. A lot of this starts with you and you getting comfortable first and foremost. Because you don't even know that you might even be helping your partner. If you can get comfortable first, then they may feel more comfortable to saying, oh, okay, you know. And I say that all the time with vulnerability. There's some courage in that because of the fact that you're opening up the forum, and then it gives somebody else the availability to say, oh, me too.
Right.
You know, so.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. And watch out for a part 2, guys.
Part
for
2.
sure. Now we can dance. Now we can dance. There we go.
Sexuality. What? Sex. Education. Yes.
Yes.